Welcome to another episode of Coffeez for Closers, the podcast where industry giants reveal how they built their empires over a cup of coffee. In today's episode, we chat with the mortgage legend Brian Decker, who rose from humble beginnings in 2004 to a top 10 loan officer and serial entrepreneur. He was the #1 top producer at 2 publicly traded companies before launching his own company, Modern Lending. Beyond mortgages, Brian turned a $500,000 cryptocurrency investment into $7 million in just 18 months. He's the president of Source Solutions and boasts a huge investment portfolio. Without further ado, we welcome Mr. Brian Decker.
Sweet.
I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of Tarek. And as I was telling you, I grew up with Tarek. So Tarek, if you're listening, you know, I'm stoked what you've done. Yeah. You know, we've always been competing since high school, so keep it up.
I know, right? The two white kids that basically with Egyptian kind of and Lebanese kind of behind you guys, right?
No, we were the 2 white Egyptians, the only 2 white Egyptians that I ever met in Southern California. Yeah. It was like
the only 2 I know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so that's all you that's all you know is.
It must be a successful trait in there because you guys are both super successful. 2 for 2 right there, man.
You know, I say this, we have a lot of really successful Egyptians. Also, you know Daniel Iskander, Westcap Lending, and there's a bunch of us, the bunch of us CEOs. So it's a good little tight network.
Yeah, man. But it's been a wild ride. I mean, it's one of those things where I know when I got out of college out here in Orange County in 2004, I remember I think we all don't have dreams as big as our realities end up being if we put in the grind, and it's funny because we were driving in here and I lived in Orange County from 2004 to like 2014, 15 after college, and even went to college in this area, and I was driving by through and it was kind of like nostalgic. I was driving by places and driving by houses and, driving by Fletcher Jones, and remember as a kid, I was like, oh, I hope someday I can buy a C-Class, and then now it's like, it's funny how that, the bar that we deem we've reached it is a never extending bar that we always find it outside of our reach no matter what we do. Right.
That's what I'm so, I really admire that about you, Brian. Like you always seek higher goals. Like you accomplished #1 loan officer. Then you're like, you know what? I'm gonna start my own mortgage company. Then you start your own mortgage company. You know what? I'm gonna start my crypto company. Then you start Crypto Charge. Then you know what? I'm gonna start Soar. I'm gonna start this Airbnb portfolio.
It's funny because I think it's a disease, as my wife says. I think for me, I've always had a hunger in learning, like ever since a little kid. I mean, my dad was a forklift driver. My mom worked swap meets on the weekends to make extra money. We lived in Chino Hills, so we couldn't even afford to live in Orange County. And so I just kind of grew up with my mom and my dad just working their tails off and never having the chance to ever really take a risk on anything because they got married young. They had 2 young kids. They had to work all these jobs. And so kind of growing up, I always just kind of felt like anything was possible if you worked hard, and so my parents always told me, there's going to be a heck of a lot more people that are smarter than you out there. But the one thing that you have, and it was just taught in our household, like in the Decker household, nobody outworks the Decker. Like it was just ingrained in us as a kid. And even today, working at every company I worked, there's a heck of a lot smarter people at every one of the companies I work for. But nobody outworks me, even still to this day. And that's something that I can control. You can't control your IQ. You can control your work ethic, and you can control what you focus in on. And so I think it's just like you. I mean, you've blown up with your content. You've blown up on all of this. 5 years ago, when you and I originally met, I remember you were talking to me and you're like, hey man, do you think you can like kind of teach me some social media stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever want to be on a camera, but you took the time, you focused on it. You actually kind of cut the safety net and we're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to free up some time. I've built this amazing organization. I'm going to put myself in a position that I can still make the decisions that I need to make for the vision of the company. But let me kind of pull out of some of the day-to-day stuff a little bit and teach people. And look what you've done in this period of time because you just put in the work and taught yourself it, And
I'm going to honestly say you've been an inspiration and I give you kudos. And that's, I think at this point in time in our life, one of the biggest goals for both of us, right, is like just to inspire people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think I was speaking at an event right before this and somebody came up to me and they were just like, how does it feel to have this or that or all these things? And I said, honestly, I'm not content with it all. I was never really been content. Like I remember as a kid, I'd play with Hot Wheels, right? And we had a 1987 Astro minivan that we had for like ever, right? And, I was always embarrassed of it because it wasn't a nice car, especially when we came up to Orange County and stuff like that. Everyone had really nice cars. And then, so my dream was always to get like, a Ferrari or Lambo or do all these things. And they're fun and they're exciting for like a week or 2 weeks or a month. And then you're like, dang, why am I paying all this insurance for this car? I don't even drive it that much. It kind of loses its luster. And everything in my life really lost its luster. I mean, the only two things I never did was, one, my faith, and two, finding purpose in teaching. I love to teach. I love to take people that are younger than us and actually take the time to try to cut their learning curve, right? And it just gives you this sense of joy and passion and purpose in life that just cannot be filled with an extra zero on your bank account.
At this point, honestly, and I know this sounds cliche, but like money really doesn't matter. It's like we're not going to take any of this with us.
No, and we know, I mean, if you look at a house you lived in 20 years ago and a house you lived in now, if you would drive, old Joe 20 years ago, you picked him up and you took Joe to the house you live in right now, you would be like, there's no way I could ever live in that house. This is insane. Now you go home to your house and you're like, well, my neighbor's house is a little bigger. Like you don't even care anymore, right? But what you will remember is a loan officer that you recruited that was making $5,000 when you recruited him, and you'll remember the first check you wrote him for $10,000 for a week, and you seeing his face, and you'll that's ingrained in your memory and your mind, and that he did this with your direction, and you believed in him when he didn't even believe in himself, and that purpose becomes a drug that's more powerful than anything.
People are like, "How are you friends with your competitor?" Like, I helped my competitor. I helped him get there. That's why I was there. I was there for his journey. It's my honor. It's my joy to empower somebody.
Yeah,
it's my honor.
Because you live in a mind of abundance, right? And it's that old cliche where, people that are really successful, they become less and less enemies with their competition because they realize there's such a massive market share out there. You're never going to dominate it. We're never going to have another, countrywide that's going to have a 30 to 40% market share now that, we have the internet and digital disruption and all of that. So why not collaborate with other people like yourselves and share things? Because many times if you share something with a so-called competitor, through the law of reciprocity, they're going to feel like they have to give you something in return of value. And so they've just shortened your learning curve on something that maybe you would have taken longer to learn. And once you kind of understand that, you realize that you're all in it together. Our problems as founders of companies, doesn't matter what our industry is, we're all fighting the same battles. So if we can understand that and actually help each other and realize we're on the same team, and it's much better to be that. I mean, we know we're in some of the mastermind groups. We know who shares openly and we know who's just there to take notes and never share anything. And once you kind of get into that founder circle, those are the people that stick out like a sore thumb. And it's all of us that share everything so openly. That's the normalcy when you get to the founder level. But on the employee level, it's the opposite. You're like, I don't want to show them how I'm doing this because what if they take my job? And it's funny because you would think it would be the opposite, the more money you made.
Yeah, that is funny. It's like you always know the guys who are willing to give and live in an abundance mentality. I think we're in two different masterminds. So it's awesome to just see you always partaking in that, always just open, here's my playbook. Yeah. This is exactly what I do on a day to day.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that about you. One thing I want you to share with the people listening is when you've been through so much in your journey. I remember you when we were kids going out at night. We were out going out. What was that aha moment? You're like, I can't do this anymore. I gotta
yeah.
I need to be the best.
Yeah. I think for me, what it was I was never the smartest in high school. I was never the best at any sport I played. And I ended up making an investment with my friend's dad. And it was a little bit of money I'd saved up. I was 27 at the time. And this was, 2007, 2008 timeframe. And I was able to save up $100,000. And which was more money than I ever thought I'd ever have in my life, at that age. And I invested it. And the investment started paying me money. It was paying me $15,000 a month on a $100,000 investment, 150% annualized returns. I was like, oh my gosh, we were going out to all the nicest restaurants here, Maestros, all these different types of things. And I got a taste of the finer thing in life. Well, after about 9 or 10 months of doing that, it ended up, he was running a massive Ponzi scheme here in Newport Beach and got arrested by the FBI, ended up embezzling like $17 million from people here in Newport Beach. I lost all my money, lost money. My dad, who didn't have much money, put in like $200,000. And I really just had my back against the wall. And most people could either like blame, John DeMar. I'm not going to hide your name. So,
you're still in jail.
You're still in jail. So, I could either blame him for that, or what I took from it was two things. One, I really liked the nicer things in life. And it opened me up to a crowd of people that they weren't smarter than me. They just honestly worked harder and they were more focused than I was. And I think it made me realize, rather than the mindset of, let me try to spend 2 years and sell debt consolidation and spend 2 years and sell loan mods, and then just kind of constantly move through all these different like side hustles. What the people did that were really successful is they became an expert at something, an absolute expert, developed a skill set that made them so valuable to other people that people walked over to them and were like, hey, you know what, man, you have an unbelievable talent, in computer engineering and computer design. Hey, I'm starting a company. Would you mind helping me out with this? And I'll give you some equity of it. And so I took from it is one, I didn't have a real skill set that stood out from the crowd. So I needed to really develop a skill set. I had to put blinders on to everything else that would come at me of the shiny object syndrome and become an absolute expert at mortgage lending, financing, understanding accounting. And if I did that and I didn't get distracted, I believed in myself that if I worked hard enough, I would have a skill set that would then eventually open up some of these opportunities to me. And that's exactly what I did, is from, that point on, when everybody else left the mortgage industry in 08 and 09, I moved into an apartment in San Diego, maxed out my credit card to do marketing on it, and didn't pull my head up from the mortgage industry until really 2019, and just focused on it and ended up winning all these awards and, kind of doing it that rather than spending 2-3 years in a bunch of different industries just to make a quick buck. I just went through the highs and lows of it and developed a skill set. And that skill set is kind of what opened up all the other opportunities.
Wow. You dominated a craft.
Yeah,
Absolutely exactly. Dominated a craft. So I'll stick on the topic of mortgages, then I'll transition to crypto here, because a lot of people are like, I want to hear about crypto or Airbnb or whatever. We're gonna get into all that. So like you were in retail and then you became the top LO. I think it was 2 years in a row consecutively in the country.
Yeah.
And then I know you were plagued with the misnomer about wholesale.
Oh yeah.
So how did you mentally go, I'm gonna leave my cush $2 million a year job here and then go completely independent, start my own company? What were you thinking?
So yeah, I spent a lot of time. I got recruited over to Guaranteed Rate in like 2012, and I actually got recruited over there as kind of the leftovers, as I called it. Ben Anderson, which was my partner or a buddy of mine at my time, we were college roommates. He was like a $300 million a year producer, and I'd only been in the industry maybe like 3 or 4 years. And so he left, went over to Guaranteed Rate, and I just came as a member of his team. And when I went over there, I was at Guaranteed Rate, and I was like, okay, this is an opportunity at the time to get around Shant Benosian and Joe Catabiano and Ben Cohen, all these beasts in the industry that were 4 or 5 years older than me. So I started just really absorbing from them and really learning. My gift was always kind of marketing. And so I really understood marketing really well. And so I spent a lot of time over there on the retail side, ended up becoming, top over there doing $400 or $500 million in production a year. And then I got recruited over by Anthony Shea over at Loan Depot in 2017 and was kind of being groomed to like run that company. I mean, I was in every board meeting with all those guys. Every time he took his yachts out, I was into that whole world with him, spending time over at his house. And what changed it all for me was they accidentally screwed up and they sent me a copy of my profit and loss from the division I was running, right? And so in the retail world, basically, I was getting paid, I think, 120 basis points at the time per deal. And I was very heavy government focused. Purchase, VA, FHA, writing $300-400 million a year on it. And, in all transparency, we made about $3 million on my W-2. Well, I found out that when I would ask them for something simple, like, hey, can I get a $20,000 a month marketing budget this month? I really want to expand, take on this new office, X, Y, and Z. They were always like, no, you got to pay that out of your own salary. Well, they screwed up and they ended up sending me the monthly profit and loss statement for my region. And I saw a bunch of stuff on it and found out that the year to date, and this was maybe in like September of 2018, and I saw that year to date, I had made them like $7.5 million of net profit. I'm talking after paying all my LOs, everything else, because I was a heavier originator of government volume. And so I was like, whoa, okay. You wouldn't give me a $20,000 budget, and I just made you $7 million this year, let alone spoke at all your conferences that you wanted me to do as the poster child for your entire company. I was like, man, I want you to make some money on me, but if I'm going to ask you for $20,000 and I just made you $7 million, like, I know me as a person, you know, you with your LOs. First off, you would never make that off your LOs because we can't ever.
We make peanuts.
But if you were in that position, you would be like, bro, here's 200 grand. Like, you know,
I don't think we've made even a fraction of that with all 900 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And so I realized that. And so what had happened, so I was like, hey, you know what? I'm not a person that quits on anybody. So I actually devised a plan. I've actually never spoke about this before, but I devised a plan that said, hey, we have a bunch of really top originators at Loan Depot that are in essence running their own companies within this company. So Loan Depot had a wholesale division at the time. So what I did is I modeled it all out and said, hey, you got two choices. One is you're going to keep losing these loan officers to moving over to the wholesale channel because they eventually discover what I discovered, but I was just such a company man. I just took me a while to discover it. I said, so why don't this? How about you just make 60 basis points off me and let me run my entire entity as my own. You can make 60 basis points off me on it. I'll cover everything, run my own P&L, do everything on it for you. You still get to make 60 basis points on me. I take all the risk of bearing all my expenses. And how about you do that? And so the board was like, this is a great idea. This is a great idea. This is a great idea. And so I left this meeting and I had prepared for the meeting for like 3 weeks. The whole board was there, everything else. My business partner now at the time was a loan officer named Taylor Roop who worked for me. We get in the car, we're driving back from Orange County back to Temecula where I lived at the time. He's like, Brian, you crushed that meeting, bro. I'm fired up, like well done, blah, blah, blah. Next day I wake up and I'm fired. Straight up fired. Articles ran about me in Housing Wire, everything else out. I figured out I became a serious threat to them because if what happened is even though it was a brilliant idea, if they created this separate channel where top originators could go and in essence franchise, this thing, they would be losing 200 basis points on me. They were making 200 to 250 basis points on me off all that government business. So if they let me do that, they were worried all their other top 30 or 40 entrepreneurial originators would want to do that too. So rather than giving us that opportunity, they basically, didn't want that to be, they didn't want that risk. They didn't want that because it messed up their whole retail model right at the time. And I'm not saying every retail company's like that.
But they did it. They eventually did it.
100% they eventually did it. But this was 2018. They didn't do it in 2018.
What year was it that they made the switch?
I think 2020. And so
you paved the way.
I literally paved the way by getting fired, right? And so what ended up happening was after that happened, kudos to Matt Ishbia, man. Matt Ishbia picked up the phone, called Shelby Elias, who's a good buddy of ours, and said, hey, there's a guy in SoCal. I think you and him would really hit it off. He's a big-time originator. And this is before anybody made the move from big originator. I was the first big originator to move from retail to wholesale.
Yeah.
And so Shelby called me up and was like, hey, man, I know the world kind of hates you right now because of everything that's being ran about you and all, because they wanted to bury me because I was a threat, at this point. And he's like, hey, Matt Ishbia, the owner of UWM, wanted me to reach out to you. And I just want to tell you, like, if you need any help, I think you should look at doing this. And so I ended up basically just starting Modern Lending with my team over there, made that switch, and then started my own company. So it was kind of out of necessity at the same time too. And then, that led me on that entrepreneurial journey.
You really you are the biggest catalyst for retail originators to transition. And you gave retail originators like that confidence, like I can make this transition realistically without like an interruption to my paycheck. So God bless you for that, Brian. It's been, it's a big initiative of the entire broker community. I think now we formed our own, brokers are better committee within within our, that group that basically focuses on Go Broker Now. That's the name of the committee, Go Broker Now. And all we focus on within that committee is retail originators.
Yeah.
And that committee really wouldn't have existed without guys like you and guys like Jonathan Haddad, who's now the president of AIM.
Yep.
Wouldn't have been where he's at and wouldn't have even realized he can make this transition.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too is, I think in many industries there's a lot of hate when there's alternatives for it, right? Like, so if you look at the car industry, right, you got car industry where people will walk in and they just want to walk into Fletcher Jones and they just want to buy an automobile on the lot. Then you got their internet division, and then you got the fleet division. You got all these divisions, and in the car industry, people that are in that industry, all those separate channels within that business, they work harmoniously together because they understand different clients want to interact in a different way. But yet within the mortgage space, it's always been like, I hate retail, or I hate wholesale, or I hate consumer direct, or I hate this. And I think there's a place for everything. And now what my personal belief is probably not to the likes of the retail world, but I think a lot of retail, kind of industries or retail players, they worked fantastic in an industry before it became really disrupted by people like Matt Ishbia, that you really could provide a better level of service, a better speed, a cheaper price to originate. And retail was really the only place you could go to get trained, right? Like if you were going to enter in the mortgage space, you weren't going to go to the mom and pop broker shop and get any training. So if you really wanted to break in the space, the same way when I graduated to become a CPA, my goal was to go work at Deloitte and Touche back then. Now it's just Deloitte, massive accounting firm, get unbelievable training. And then once you got that training for the big firm, then you moved to the boutique accounting firm and you made all your money there. Well, retail served that purpose of like training some of the very best loan officers in the country, whether it was Quicken Loans or Guarantee Rate or Loan Depot. You cut your teeth. You had massive amounts of volume to be able to deal with, and you were willing to not make as much money because you weren't taking any risk and you were just being trained. But nowadays, within the broker community, thanks to UWM and thanks to places like what you guys have done at, here at eCapital, like basically what you guys figured out is, hey, through the power of Matt Ishbia at UWM, we are able to take this multi-billion-dollar giant and basically leverage their training, leverage their speed, their platform, their technology, and actually provide the training for a new loan or a relatively new loan officer to come on board, get the training at this massive scale of this firm with the power behind it, but not give up 95% of your paycheck to do so. And
we've actually taken it a step above. And one thing we really pride ourselves on is like we use all of the back end and we get additional love at UWM because we're their top banking partner. But in addition to that, we spend over $1 million a month on our technology, our marketing, our data aggregation, our tech stack to give to the folks, all of our training and coaching. Like we basically amplify it at a micro level so we could really take any retail originator, plug them into our ecosystem, they hit the ground running, and with it, there's like seamless. They didn't even know that they switched to wholesale.
And it's because you're not greedy. You win on scale and volume. Yeah, that's the only way you win.
The only way we're winning, and we're purely a volume shop. We charge nothing. Our target demographic right now is broker owners. Yeah. A broker owner is 10 times better off piggybacking on an ecosystem like ours, the state licensing, the audit, the compliance, the surety bonds, the onboarding, the accounting, the payroll, everything handled for you. Yeah. For what? A measly 10, 15%. Yeah. Like, what do they spend on that stuff? They'll never do it at our scale.
Oh, no. And people don't realize how much that costs. I know. When running Modern Lending, day to day of it for 4 years, people have no idea the cost to actually originate a loan, providing all the technology. And the only way you drive down that cost is at scale, right? Like once you've built out a system and you've spent a couple $1 million building out technology, adding an extra seat it's no big deal. But when you're doing 50 units a month and your tech budget is $50,000 a month on that, that's $1,000 per loan of your profit that is getting eaten up by just building out something that technically is really built to be able to handle 500 loans a month. But once you guys have figured out is you've reinvested in your company to get it to this point. You built the roads before you had the cars there to drive it down.
And what we're fortunate, both you and I, it's like we don't need to make money. I can invest all day just to win.
Yeah.
And Matt Ishbia is the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the same way. He's like, I don't care about money. I'll go. Elon Musk, same thing. You can't pay him you can pay him $1 zillion to advertise, and he'll be like, "F you,"
because he wants to win. You want to win. Like that's what you want to do. You want to win, and by win, it's not personally win. You want to win to be able to know that you are providing the absolute best service, the best experience for your clients, best experience for your employees, and disrupt something. Do something that is different. That's the only reason why I get up in the morning still and I'm so fired up is because I'm disrupting different things. I'm actually paving the way. Yeah, it's way harder to hike up a mountain not using a trail, but it's way more rewarding when you get to a top that the trail can't reach.
That's right. Trailblazers only, baby.
Yep, exactly, brother.
That's right. So we'll talk. We're gonna dive into that now. Like, you made such a big risk, like that. You took such a big risk taking $500K in crypto in a super volatile crypto market. I remember when you put that $500K, it's like, dude, Brian's crazy. He's gonna lose all that money. Like, I can't believe he just put all that money in there. What made you gave you that foresight to go all in on crypto at that time?
Yeah. So my brother won. So my brother is like Elon Musk brilliant. Like I'm like 160 IQ, and my brother had been a blockchain developer, machine learning developer, understood code. And I've always been like a math guy. I've just always understood math. And so what most people don't understand is cryptocurrency, just like, how mortgages and mortgage loan officers, we were so afraid to tell somebody that we were a mortgage loan officer in 2008 and 9 and 10 because we killed the world, right? We collapsed the world. And when people used to ask me, I say, I'm in finance. I would be afraid to say I was a loan officer because it was the Get Short movie had come out, all those types of things. Well, nowadays, with all the licensing and regulation and all these things, it's a proud thing to say. I'm a mortgage originator. I'm licensed in X, Y, and Z states, part of MBA, whatever that may be. And so what I understood about cryptocurrency was once I got past the fact of, everyone's saying it's a Ponzi scheme. And what most people just happen is they know 4 friends that lost their life savings in Bitcoin, or they bought Bitcoin when
I lost a bunch of money too. I'm still disgruntled.
Exactly. Everyone has that. When in reality, that's no different than a homeowner going in, and the first time they ever bought a home, they ended up buying a home and get a loan through a mortgage loan officer who threw them in a neg am loan. Are they never going to buy a home again? Of course they're not. They're gonna buy a home again. They're gonna do it because they understood that, hey, this was just a bad experience. I myself was not educated on mortgage products, and I got taken advantage, and I just believed something without doing any of my own research into it. So what I did at that time was I ended up selling out of a cannabis company that I got invested in, which was another huge risk. I took my signing bonus for guaranteed rate and threw it in. And you live here, so People's right here. Yeah. So that was my cannabis company I started with my business partner. We were the original founders of it. So I had gotten through my signing bonus, all my signing bonus from guaranteed rate, which was 95% of my net worth, into a cannabis thing. And that ended up coming out, and I ended up walking with a couple $1 million from it. At the time. So I had that money, and this was in 2019, and I said, okay, I really don't want to just go put this money in the bank and earn 1% interest on my money. Let's buy some real estate, but I'm young enough where I can take a risk. And anybody that really makes big wins takes a risk. And at the time I was 37 years old. I'm like, you know what? If I lose all $500,000 of this money, I can recuperate. Am I going to be happy? I mean, it was probably 40% of my liquidity at the time. But I also understood if I really research this, I'm just going to open my mind to it. And what I understood was a very simple concept. Real estate in Newport Beach is valued at what it is because of scarcity, right? Scarcity. They're not building any more coastline, and they're sure as hell not building any more coastline with the most amazing weather in the world, right? And so what I understood about Bitcoin is it wasn't like some fake coin, right? It's not. What it actually was it's building a network. And we understand banking, right? We know what a pain in the butt it is. If we want to go and we want to send a wire, we could have $5 million in our account. And if you and I want to send a wire to an account we have never sent a wire to in, let's just say, France, It's going to take us 3 or 4 days to get it there. The bank's going to call us from a fraud report. We have this middleman, aka the bank, that we are taking our own money and wanting to send it to another source of money. We verify everything. They take their time. They do their due diligence. They take money from us. There's all these other processes. Well, what basically Bitcoin's network was it is a banking system that created a new network that basically I no longer needed a middleman for. That I could take US dollars, convert it into Bitcoin, immediately send that Bitcoin to whatever account that I wanted to send it to in Bitcoin. They could receive it and immediately exchange it into whatever currency that they wanted at the time. And to do that, I didn't have to have the permission from anybody. And when that went through that network, you had thousands and thousands of independent computers that would validate that. Okay, is he really trying to send it to this address? Yes. Okay, does he really have the money? Yes. And they were able to go ahead and do that. So it kind of changed the banking system. Well, what I then also realized was there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. There'll never be any more. And of that 21 million Bitcoin, about 4 million of them lost because when it was originally found, people bought it for pennies and they lost it on USB drives or whatever that may be. And the way it works is, imagine what would happen is the way Bitcoin worked is every single time that these people who worked on building the network, right, like worked on coding the network, they're known as miners, but basically worked on the network, they were given 50 Bitcoin for accomplishing a certain task. So they said, hey, you got to do this task, and after you do this task, here's 50 Bitcoin. And that's how Bitcoin ended up starting getting into population and supply. Well, what happened was it was programmed into the system that every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that was given to people who were working on securing the network got cut in half. But the problems got more difficult. So just like anything else, if I have to put more effort into getting half of something, well, guess what? The price of that something, if it has a fixed supply, is going to go up. It's way more difficult to buy a house in Newport Beach today than it was 50 years ago. You had a lot more options. There was land, you could do everything else. Well, just over time, more people bought this land up and you had less and less land. And now if you want to go buy a house anywhere on the water in Newport Beach, you have one, very limited options to be able to do it. And number two, it's very rare that one of those options even comes up for sale and meets your specific needs. That just happened over time. So I understood in the Bitcoin network, okay, if right now there's 95% of a supply, but over the course of time, there gets less and less and less supply. So to give you a case in point right now, you got something like 94% of the entire supply of Bitcoin has already been issued. Somewhere around 94% of it, right? And so now what we have happening in April is instead of getting, now it's 6.5 Bitcoin for doing all this work, that's going to go down to just a little over 3 Bitcoin. So, and it's way more complicated to be able to do it. So what changed it for me is when I understood the concept of, one, here's an asset at the time had already been around for 10 years. Here's an asset that there's only ever 21 million of them. Here's an asset that can't be inflated away by any government, by any printing of money, by anything they could be doing. And at the time, you had about 100 million users on it. It was growing faster at an adoption rate than any other technology in human history. So we look at the internet, and the internet, the way it was growing was roughly about somewhere between 50 and 80% growth per year. Bitcoin and the amount of user adoption has been growing at 130% per year. Okay, so it's the fastest growing technology out there. So I understood this. Once I actually did the research of it, I'm like, okay, this seems kind of like a no-brainer to me to be able to do this. What's the worst that can happen? It's already been like slammed down in price. And we know at real estate, you and I know exactly how real estate works, right? It's very easy. If I told you tomorrow, real estate interest rates, mortgage rates are going to drop from 7% to 3%, what happens to house prices? They go up.
It's going to skyrocket.
So what if I told you in Newport Beach, hey, we have 40 houses for sale in Newport Beach. And I know next week, 20 of those houses are going to be sold. And there's only going to be 20 houses left available for sale in a week. What's going to happen to those prices?
Again,
go up, right? So Bitcoin is no different. I know once every 4 years, the supply of Bitcoin gets cut in half. Number two is, I know right now, 70% of all the Bitcoin that is in people's wallet has not moved in over a year. Then compile with that fact, now, for the very first time ever, that got passed by the SEC in January, institutions are allowed to own Bitcoin and hold them on their balance sheet because of the spot Bitcoin ETF. So to give you an idea, an ETF, for people that don't understand it, but you all likely own ETFs, it just basically stands for an exchange traded fund or an electronic traded fund. All that basically it is saying, hey, if I want to buy gold 15 years ago, I had to physically go to a store and buy gold and store gold, right? Well, in 2004, what happened was a gold ETF was launched that said, hey, rather than buying gold, buy this stock, GLD, and what we'll do is for every dollar you buy in this stock, we will go and buy $1 of gold for you and store it, okay? It made the accessibility to the asset very easy. It's way easier to buy a stock with a click of a button than it is to go down to the jewelry store and buy an ounce of gold. But yet, it still has the same effects. I buy $1 of this stock, I am pulling $1 of supply off the market, right? So what a Bitcoin spot ETF did was it got passed in January of this year. And no ETF in United States history, which there's been 5,500 of them launched, has ever had $1 billion of investment into it within the first 30 days. Doesn't matter if it's a tech ETF, a gold ETF, a silver ETF, never happened. Within the first 30 days of Bitcoin spot ETFs, guess how much money flooded into them if not one of them had ever done $1 billion before?
5 billion.
$10 billion.
Oh my gosh.
In 30 days. You had 4 of them. One of them, which is BlackRock's, did $5 billion in 30 days. Fidelity's did $4 billion. ARK Investments did $1 billion. And WisdomTree did $1 billion. Okay? And there's a bunch of other ones that did that. So that doesn't just tell our people here that Wall Street doesn't kind of like Bitcoin. Wall Street effing loves Bitcoin because they understand one thing. We assume that real estate goes up in value. We assume stocks go up in value. They don't necessarily go up in value. What happens is we denominate, or how we value real estate is in dollars. But let me change somebody's perspective. So today, say Bitcoin's $50,000, right? If I want to buy $1 million house today, it's going to take me 20 Bitcoin, right? So if I have a house in Costa Mesa today that costs 20 Bitcoin, and I price it in Bitcoin. I'm not allowed to price real estate in dollars. I have to price it into Bitcoin. So a house in Costa Mesa is 20 Bitcoin. Well, let's say a year from now, Bitcoin goes up to $75,000. Now that house is only cost me 15 Bitcoin. Did that house go up in value? Not according to Bitcoin. It actually is cheaper. I need less Bitcoin to buy this house. However, look at United States dollars. If I have that house is $1 million, and in a year from now, it went up to $1.2 million. Did that house really go up in value? Or is it just dependent upon what I'm measuring that against, right? Well, why does the things priced in dollars always seem to go up in value over time? Because we inflate away the power of the dollar, right? The federal government can just print dollars. I mean, think about it. It took the U.S. government 220 years, from George Washington to George W. Bush, to get into debt of $7 trillion. 220 years of government spending put us $7 trillion in debt. From Barack Obama to Joe Biden, okay? So we look at that over those 16 years, we've added $27 trillion to our debt. $7 trillion for 220 years, $27 trillion in the last 16 years. So when I understood that basically the government can just make supply whenever they want, by ever how much they want, I sure as hell want to put my money into things that they can't do that with, right? Which is why I believe in real estate, gold, cryptocurrency. So once I understood this concept, and this was prior to the Bitcoin spot ETF, that $500,000 investment was the safest decision I've ever made of an investment.
It was, and you put it all on Bitcoin.
I did Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I bought like $200,000 of Ethereum and $300,000 of Bitcoin at that time. And that was in, I want to say, probably sometime in late 2019. And it went up by October of 2021. So in 18 months, went to 7.7 million. And then I cashed out about 3 million out of it, put it in my bank, let the rest of it ride, which looking back, now I've really learned the cycles, but it's very easy. It's a very simple concept. You buy Bitcoin prior to the halving. You stop buying Bitcoin about 3 months after the halving, or cryptocurrency. You sit. Then what you do is you wait about 9 to 12 months and you sell out of it all, and it goes into a bear market for about a year and a half. Then it trades sideways for about a year. You spend about a year buying it. It goes into a halving again, and it repeats the cycle. It's done this over and over and over and over and over again.
So where are you at in the stage right now?
So right now, Bitcoin halving is in April. So what I've done is I basically, that $4 million I left on the table, right? Had 7.7, pulled $3 million out, right? So it's about $4 million bucks. It dropped to about $1.1 million in value in November of 2022.
Yeah, I remember that.
So everyone's like, oh my God, you lost all this money. First off, I put in 500 grand. I walked with 3, and I still had all my Bitcoin and Ethereum. It just wasn't priced as much in US dollars. Well, what happens is that same value that was down to 1.1, 1.2 million is already back up to about 3.4 million bucks. We haven't even had the halving yet. So for every single person listening to this, do yourself a favor. Spend money and buy cryptocurrency. Stick to the safe ones. Your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your Solana. To give you guys a case in point, Bitcoin's $1 trillion asset. This is not like buying a penny stock, okay? There's like 7 companies in the world that have a bigger market cap than Bitcoin, okay? So you're dealing with, or even Ethereum, it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, okay? So I would sit there and I'd say buy Bitcoin, buy Ethereum, buy Solana, buy XRP, buy Render, and buy Chainlink. Those are 6 easy projects, and they all serve a different point. And just like now, we know that if you're going to buy something that has a really big market cap, meaning like something like Bitcoin, it takes a lot of money to move the needle of it. If something's already worth $1 trillion, there's got to be a lot of money flowing into that to move that price up.
Yeah.
So if Bitcoin's 50,000 bucks today, it'll probably be worth in 12 to 16 months from now. Worst case scenario, 100 grand. Best case scenario, 150 grand. Okay, let's just call it that. You got something like Ethereum, that's probably going to be able to 3 or 4x your money. Something like Solana, which is like $100 billion project, it's like $100 today. It's probably going to get to like $500 or $600. That's like a 5 or 6x. So that's why you want to diversify, because it's almost a 99.9% certainty that Bitcoin is going to take out its all-time high by the end of the year. I've been right about this long enough. I'd be willing to bet my entire net worth on it. And so now I know this cycle, I'm playing with all house money. I left some of my profits in, and that house money, if it's worth 3.3, I mean, conservatively, I think by this time next year, it's worth 10 to 12 million, probably.
Man, you're making me motivated to start again. It's like, I lost my tail, and in like 2018, I'm like, why did I pull out? I could have been like...
Time, just like anything else in real estate. You buy real estate in 2004, you sell it in 2008, you lost money. You buy it in 2004, you sell it in 2022, you look like you're the greatest real estate investor of all time. Yeah. It's all timing. It's all timing.
You're absolutely right. So I want to dive into this just because this is really important. It's on my heart to talk about this, and I've really just kind of been tracking your journey on this. It's your spiritual journey, which I really am really impressed by, because that's what moves the needle, right? Yeah. That's really what moves the needle. And I've noticed you've totally, since you moved to Arizona, and I don't know why, but you're on fire for God. You're on fire for the Lord. I noticed you're doing your quiet times. You're praying. You're like, your money is like not important anymore, right? Yeah. It's your journey. It's your faith. It's enriching your kids' spiritual journeys. And what was the catalyst for that? What really inspired that? What was the moment that caused that for you? And
I think for me, I grew up in a Christian home, and when I was younger, I was definitely a Christian. I abstained from sex till, I was 20 years old. I wasn't a big drinker, wasn't a big partier, went to a private Christian college and did all of that. And then when I got into, call it the real world, living here in Orange County during the mortgage boom, you get sucked into social things, right? We I got into partying and going out and things were kind of just coming easy to me in life, right? I didn't really feel like I needed God at all. Like kind of people, sometimes people, if they're financially, like if you're in Africa and you're starving, you need God to provide the next meal for you is kind of the way you feel. For me I kind of got to this arrogant mindset of I didn't need God. Like I came from nothing and in my mind, it's the wrong way of thinking. It was like, I did this. Look, I did this. It was my hard work that did this. Look, so what if I'm out drinking and partying and doing these things? I didn't wake up dead. I'm not in hell. Like, I just kind of got in this mindset of this arrogant mindset. And then what ended up happening is we all know, in 2020, end of 2022, basically at that time, I got my clock cleaned on my crypto account, right? I went from $4 million down to like $1 million at the time. Mortgage industry started going, rates raised on us like a crazy person, went from making several $1 million a year to having to put in $1 million plus a year. And so for the first time in a long time, I ended up going from thinking I had it figured out to, in a very short period of time, nothing I could do could fix it. I couldn't make interest rates drop, no matter how good I was at marketing or how good I was at investing in crypto or how I was at buying real estate or whatever it may have been. I couldn't, outsmart what was going on with me in life, right? And so I went from thinking, oh, shoot, I have a $20 million net worth to, shoot, my net worth is $5 million in a matter of a year, right? And so, which most people's like, oh, that's still a lot of money. Try losing 75% of your net worth in a year and you tell me how you feel. It doesn't matter what that dollar amount is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And so it kind of put me at this point of, man, I'm not any happier that I have all these things that I never thought I would have. I'm actually sadder because they're now a drain on me. I've worked my whole life to get all these things. And one, they're being taken away from me. And number two, they never brought me the joy that I thought they would bring me. And I just really became kind of a bitter person. I started not being a very good husband. Not that I was ever unfaithful. I've never been nothing of that, but I was just grumpy at home. You know how it is. And during that time, or if you're getting kicked in our teeth every single day, no matter how hard we had to work, right? And then to go home and try to be a good dad and a good father and do all these things and put on a smiley face while you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, even though you've never worked as hard ever. And so I ended up, one of the guys that worked for me in my office, his kid's name's Daniel Garcia. He's not a kid, I guess. He's in his mid-30s. But he was like, he's a really hardcore Christian, like really, really good at the time. And I had completely fallen away from my faith for like 15 years. And so he would always come in and talk to me, about, and I'm like, dude, this guy, how is he so happy and joyful all the time? Like, he doesn't have all the things I have, he's like, kind of has to work his face off to just kind of make ends meet. Like, how is he so joyful and happy? And so he told me about a church to go to, and it was called Orchard Church. And I was never a fan of going to church when they've just, you've been growing to, they give you those just kind of like, Hallmark card sermons, like love your neighbor, like don't, like, it's all fluff. I like people when they stimulate me educationally. Like, I want somebody to be like, yo, don't watch porn, man. It's going to ruin your sex life with your wife. Here's what God has to say about it. Like for an example, like real, they don't give those Hallmark sermons. So I ended up starting to go to Orchard Church. And this was probably in about April of last year, April of 2023. And really just started to realize, like, why am I attaching all my joy in life to physical things that don't even bring me joy when I acquire them? So it really made me start to look. And so I started to open up my Bible again. And I really started to read it. And my wife and I had been kind of fighting because I was being a jerk and just being grumpy all the time. And she started going with me to church. And so we started going that. And I started, even though my finances weren't necessarily turning around, I started like becoming more of a joyful person. And then we ended up, when I had to take this gamble, I for the first time ever prayed about something I was doing with business and just kind of really prayed about soar energy and everything I was doing with Tarek versus like, okay, am I going to turn my mortgage company over? Am I going to take this risk? And I just really kind of felt God leading me to Arizona to do it because I just refused to ever build another big company here in California. I just didn't, morally aligned with a lot of what California was at the time. I felt like it was really putting a lot of pressure on my wife and I. She's from Texas, so she really wasn't, aligned politically with it here. And so we started going out to Scottsdale. And when we got out to Scottsdale, there's this pastor named Mark Driscoll. He runs Trinity Church out there. And we went there, and I've never, ever just felt like the presence of God like I felt in this place. Like, people were just on fire for God, and he just spoke, and he just wasn't afraid to speak his mind. Like, he wasn't afraid to address things in our culture today that have just become normalcy, right? Like, whether it's, ads we see that are pretty much advertising child pornography, or we make it weird to be a white male and you should feel guilty and you shouldn't if you were transgender on everything. And we've kind of flipped society. And I feel like a lot of times, and I'm not talking negatively, well, child pornography, I'm definitely talking negatively on, but I just felt like for the first time ever, somebody was taking a sermon and basically, kind of speaking directly from the Bible and basically being like, yo, it's not okay to have adultery and cheat on your wife. Like, they were speaking about real things in church, where a lot of times at church I had felt like it was sweep it under the rug, put on your Sunday school clothes, and let's everybody go be fake at church, right? Like, for an hour to make ourselves feel better and go home. He was like calling you out, but in a way that made you look at your life and really evaluate your life and become better, and realize that you're never going to feel good enough to be a Christian. You're never going to feel good enough. You can't earn your way into things. And so he just challenges you to really spend time in the Bible every single day. I would find time to, spend that extra 30 minutes on a social media post, but I wouldn't find the time to spend 10 minutes praying at night with my kids. So I just started making it a routine. I'm going to read the Bible every single morning, even if I don't want to. I'm going to pray with my kids every single night. I'm going to stop being afraid to say I'm a Christian because it was going to hurt my social media following, or it would cause rift at my company, or whatever that would be. I just kind of really put my faith in God with it. And then my wife and I and my kids all got baptized, and I just made a public, affirmation of that. And I'm nowhere near what I hope to be someday, but 2023 was just one of the most joyful years of my life, and it had nothing to do with my career. It was the hardest year of my life for myself, career-wise and decision-wise.
And I myself, I'm starting. I've been deep in faith, but I'm doing a lot of introspection, and I'm starting to really try to work on my own faith. And I've been in church adamantly every week, 2-3 times a week, and it's part of our culture because we're Coptic and we were killed for being Christian.
Yeah.
And but you don't really realize how far you are from God until you do that deep introspection. Yeah. Which is what you really and what you're saying is so powerful even to me. Because am I reading my Bible enough in the morning, or am I praying I'm praying with my kids, but I got 4 kids. I got to go in every room and pray sometimes, and I don't get to do it all at the same time.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things as a father. One of the things that really hit home for me with Mark is I think we live in a society where the man of the house, we take the responsibility financially. We take all these other responsibilities, but for some reason we leave out the responsibility of being that example to our wives and kids on how to lead a godly life and to bring them to God, right?
We're supposed to be the priests.
We're supposed to. And yet, for me, when he had said that, I was like, okay, I know I'm a good father. Like, the second I get home from work at 6:30, I don't look at a phone, I don't do anything. I am with my kids, helping them. Like, I know I'm that. And I'm working on date nights with my wife, and I'm doing that, and I provide for them financially, and I'll sacrifice anything it comes to for any of my family or my kids. But why do I completely just not try to be the leader spiritually in my house? Like, just because maybe my wife watched me party, or my wife make me make poor moral decisions, or my kids saw me come home after a night of drinking or something like that. Like, who cares? Like, Jesus spent time with prostitutes and sinners and lepers, and because those are the people that really needed it, and he watched their lives transform. Like, so don't be ashamed of your past. Only be ashamed once you've identified what your past is and not make that change once you know what you should be doing, right? And so I think for me, I'm nowhere near where I need to be, but I just made that decision of stop being the financial leader and start being the spiritual leader in my house.
That is a huge takeaway for everybody listening, guys. That's what we all need to strive towards. And that acknowledgement of humility in your life is really the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? It's the beginning of your wisdom.
Yeah, no. And I think that's where it really comes down to is surrendering your ego, right? And I think
Ego's the enemy. It really is.
Horrible. And I mean, 20 years ago, you were the smartest one of your friends, right? And you were like, 22, like, I'm going to be more successful than these guys. I get good grades. I get this and that. Now at 41, in the rooms I'm in, I'm like, whew, these dudes are so much smarter than me. And so much, you have this level of you like literally do a 180 as you get older and you realize, and then that just brings you a level of humility. And a lot of times if people are arrogant, they just happen to be the smartest one or most successful version of their small circle of friends. And they're afraid to leave that circle because they're no longer the alpha in that circle. And once you actually surrender that and you actually start to see this, you get this level of humility about you. You become really willing to give. You're really willing to do all of these things. And that right there, when you compile that to, spending time with God and you understand that if the most powerful being that has ever existed and is the ultimate creator of it all sent his son down to die on a cross and get crucified, and he in 1 second could make the entire world disappear, and he was that humble, it's a new perspective on what type of humility we should actually become. It
really is. It really is. One thing I like to ask every podcast guest that comes on the show, and I ask this for myself, and I ask this for everyone else out there, is your goals. And it's about what is a personal goal that you have, what is a family goal that you have, and what's a business goal that you have.
So a family goal for me personally is I've been a notorious workaholic for 21 years, right? Just who I've been. So family goal for me personally is I want to spend at least 1 week a quarter on vacation with my family, not paying attention to a phone or a computer, right? Because actually spending quality time with them, and that all started with me just putting my phone away at 6:30.
What's your strategy for that? Because I suffer from that. Matter of fact, I think I got in an argument about my phone this morning. That's how bad it is.
My kids were calling me phone boy. Like my kid, and they like my, and so and my buddy, my business partner, Shalaby Elias, same way. And we started talking about it one time, and I was just like, man, like my kids, I could get away with being on the phone when they were 2, 3, 4 years old.
Now they can't.
Now my kids are 8 and 9. They know. And
my kid called me out of baseball practice the other day.
And so for me, the way trust me, I'm still not where I need to be, but I'm dramatically improved, is the way I end up thinking about it is we all know that father that we know that's around that worked too much, made a bunch of money, and his kids turned out to be drug addicts, right? And I'm not saying it's because he was on his phone, but I am saying because he wasn't a present father. He can build a great company, but we all know, we know CEOs, we know people that have built massive companies and their kids are all drug addicts. Their kids don't have work ethic. They have this, and that is their problem. That is the mother and the father's problem. So great. You helped 1,000 of your employees create a better life for themselves, but you didn't do that for your kids. Like, what does that say about you as a man, right? And that only comes from spending quality time. So one of the things I started doing is shooting content with my kids, right?
I saw that, yeah.
And because I figure, you know what? I'm going to force myself to make sure that I'm spending all this time teaching other people. Now my kids are old enough. Let me teach them. Let me teach them and be able to do it. And I know if I put it in the regiment of shooting content, it really forces me to do it on a consistent basis with them to be able to kind of spend that time. And so, like I said, it's not perfected, but I think one of the things that we have to do is the way you do that is you replace yourself at the office to a certain degree. You realize we're in mortgage or energy efficiency or crypto or whatever. And no offense, if it takes you 4 extra hours to answer that email, is anybody going to die? No, they're not. We're not heart surgeons. We're not ER doctors. We're not we're finance guys, like we have put this burden on ourselves when this burden really doesn't exist. And we've put our level of importance on the wrong things, right? Like, my daughter came home crying home from school because boys were being mean to her yesterday, right? And the only reason why she felt comfortable pulling me aside last night and talking to me about it is because I've been more present with her in her life and building that relationship. Whereas a year ago, I know she would have never done that. She would have pulled her mom aside.
Yeah, that's what my daughter's doing now.
And that just comes from, I pray with them every night in their bed. We go around, ask for their prayers. I make sure to try to go to all their practices and this and that. And, just ask them how their day was, like who their best friend is. Like I kind of thought to myself, like, shoot, I don't even know my kids' best friends, a year ago. Like, I don't know. These kids would come over for the birthday party and be like, who's that? I'd be like, oh, it's Christopher. He's Slater's best friend, and I'm like, I have no clue. I've never even heard him say Christopher's name, but yet my wife knew and she's in the house, with me. So I think it was a lot of that.
That's awesome that your daughter pulled you aside. That says a lot.
Yeah. And I think especially too, you have daughters, like it's easy to get, like for me, with my son, it's so easy. We like the same stuff. We like soccer. We like wrestling. We like cars. Like it's very easy for me to bond with him. But I grew up in a family of all boys, and I'm a pretty masculine dude. So my daughter's into dance and makeup and skincare and all the other things you are when you're 9, which aren't really the things I'm into, right? Or don't know a lot about. So I just have had to learn how to connect with her on other levels. And it's, and I was like, and you'd be surprised the power of what it did as a father is like, she had told me all the boys were mean to her. And I just like, hey, trust me. When I was a boy, I was mean to girls too. Like as boys, we're immature. We usually pick on the girl that we like. And you need to know inside yourself that you are beautiful. You are smart. You have to have that inner sense of confidence. I said, Dad gets roasted on social media all day long. Do I let that bother me? No, I don't even care. Why? Because I know like who I am as a person. I know I'm not those things, so it doesn't even bother me. So my job for you is to make sure you know that you have the confidence as a woman that when people say those things to you, you look at it the same way that I look at those Instagram comments. It's just somebody trying to probe me and get a reaction out of me because they're insecure. That boy making fun of you, he's insecure. So he's trying to bring you down to his level because he knows that you aren't those things. So he's trying to get your attention to do it. And she was just like, oh, that helps me so much, Dad, this or that. But it's just, if I wouldn't have spent that time, I know she would have never pulled me aside. And like, mind you, this is the first time she's pulled me aside, ever. And
that's a big honor,
life, which is that's why I'm, obviously talking about it. And I'm not where I am, so I'm not saying this is I've got it figured out. I mean, I've really only started in the last 6 or 7 months to try to make this change. So, I still got a long way to go.
I feel like I just started to make the change in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
And I got a huge road ahead of me.
Yeah, but it's not too late. Your kids are young. I mean, your kids are 10 and under. Yeah. It ain't too late, It's not like your kids are 18 years old,
It's crazy. People look at us like, you've accomplished all this and that. And like, we have so much to do to humble ourselves. Yeah, and this is why I asked this goal, just to get perspective on my own goals.
Yeah, exactly. And so for you said the other one is
personal, business, and family.
Yep. So personal for me, truthfully, is I want to a year from now. I want to have the ability of running and leading a Bible study of entrepreneurs because I'm not there yet because, I'm still newer in my journey. So one of the reasons, and not that I think you need to be like some crazy pastor to be able to do that, but I need to get my biblical knowledge up. But one of the things I think is really lost in the world of entrepreneurs is many people think the only way to the top is to cut corners, be shady, take the kind of fast way there. And so for me, I really want to kind of pull together an assembly of entrepreneurs in Scottsdale area that we can really link up with and really be proud to integrate our faith into our business. Because it's very hard as a business owner because everybody wants to sue you for everything, right? Like it doesn't matter, but I've just kind of made that decision personally at every company I have. Not that I'm saying, oh, I'm only hiring Christians or anything like that, but no, like I want people at my company to know that I'm a man of faith. My dad has done a fantastic job with that, with his stuff. So I really want to make that known within my profession and in my business that I'm going to say no to things that in the short term can probably make me a lot of money, but in the long term could pay, you have serious consequences from a disbelieving or from a, upsetting God or making an immoral decision on that. So once I feel like I've gotten that down, I really want to kind of pull together like an entrepreneurial kind of Bible study on that. And then business wise, I want to have a big exit. Like for me, I've built a couple small companies, but now with Soar Energy and what Tarek and I did, we just had 45% of our company acquired by a major firm with some of the founders of like Terminex and Dish Network, this really big home services company. And so we already have basically a end buyer that has already approached us. We just have certain things we got to do over the next 3 years to get to that goal. But my business goal is I want to have an exit, and I want to have a large exit so that I can really use that money, because my ultimate dream is to be able to go around and do something like how like an Ed Milet or Tony Robbins did, but completely different. I want fathers and sons, or mothers and daughters, or fathers and daughters to be able to come to a place and to be able to run like a 1 day or a 2 day workshop in different areas of the country and teach kids how to become entrepreneurs. Teach them what they should be learning in school. Like teach them, hey, come in, I'm going to teach you guys about, how to use content marketing. How, if you want to be able to utilize AI, here's how you understand business and finance and entrepreneurship. And then and do it at a way that all we're doing is covering the cost, and then also having sponsorships. If you're a mom and you don't have any money to do it, I want to have the money that I have set aside for my exits to pay for you guys to go there. To really, the only way we're going to change this next generation and get them out of this generation of, it's okay, everybody can kind of do what they see is right in their own eyes, right? The only way we're going to change that is by changing that generation behind us and teaching them the right things that we learn in school. Because right now we're letting public school system teach our kids whatever they want. And the public school system has definitely changed over the last 50 or 60 years. It's brainwashing our kids to depend on the government, to basically depend and make it understandable that, we're pulling things out of history just because we don't like what history said, because it's not culturally okay today, right? And so what I want to do is basically create a community and to create a way that parents who don't know these things can take their kids. Doesn't matter where your financial thing is. If you have a kid that has that ambitious spirit or that entrepreneurial spirit, take them to a place and we can teach them to do this thing so we can actually make that impact. And the only way I'm going to really be able to do that is to get, to have this exit. And I want to know I can accomplish it.
God bless you, Brian. You've been an amazing guest today. Thank you. God bless your journey. Cheers to Coffeez for Closers. And thank you guys all for watching. Thank you, Brian.